Welcome to Response Able Parenting, the podcast that shows you how to parent in alignment to your emotions, needs, and goals versus your programming, bad advice, and let's face it, outdated strategies that just don't work. You'll get in the trenches support on nervous system and emotional regulation, critical mindset shifts, stronger communication strategies, and more. In this podcast, you'll gain transformational tools that take you from reacting to every frustration to responding with clarity, regulation, and finally setting the example you desire for your kids. I'm Becky Jennings, your new parenting coach, and this is the Response Able Parenting podcast. Let's get into it. You know that moment where you're playing a game with your ADHD kid and something shifts and they realize they're not going to win the game? And from that moment on, it's like, how can they either persuade us to lose, or they switch the rules, or they become the victim of that last play and it wasn't their fault and the game is rigged, or any of this stuff, right? They get so hyper focused on the win that they stop having fun. So today I'm going to share a story about how we went bowling. And this particular pattern happened with our ADHD son. Now, I'll preemptively say, I am not a bowler. Like, I'll go bowling. It can be fun, but I don't have the skill. There's no skill there. So it was really shocking to everybody that I was having a good game. Game one, I somehow was like actually hitting, I would hit 9 almost every single time. Like, that never happens for me. So it was exciting. It was fun, but it was not fun for my ADHD kid. He was not pleased to see that he was doing worse than me. And he would and he didn't also understand the point totals of how, like, if you get a strike, how it adds on. By the way, quite frankly, I didn't either. We all had to look it up because we're all rusty at this. We're amateurs, below amateur, like family fun at best. So he's really starting to get frustrated that he's losing the game. He is determined to win this game. He is playing every angle possible. He's not only begging me to play worse so that he can win, which I'm like, I don't even know where that ball is going. So for me to play worse, I just have to put it in the gutter every single time. No one knows what's happening when I throw this down the thing. I don't even know what it's called. Alley. See? I'm not good at bowling. And so he's trying every angle. He's not only begging me to stop throwing it, to just he's asking if he can roll for me so he can essentially roll it into the gutter. He is lining it up perfectly, and he's on hands and knees and he pushes it ever so slightly so it's rolling at the smallest snail's pace so he can hit that one pin that's up. I mean, he is doing everything. He's trying every possible angle to win. And when it doesn't go his way, whoo boy, right? We're getting explosions. He's screaming at the ball. He's, slapping his legs. He's frustrated. He's falling on the alley floor, all disheveled. I mean, he's having a moment. And there's a couple things happening for us as parents. One, and this is where I really had to say, Becky, you're in the expectation gap. You are so deep in this expectation gap because you expected to just come to a bowling alley and have fun. We're going to have dinner. We're going to play bowling. That's what I expected. Just fun. There's music. It's exciting. It's the first couple days of summer. Let's just have fun. But that was not the reality. For my son, it was all wrapped up in winning. Winning, 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 winning. That was all he wanted. That was all he could focus on. So the gap between my expectations of just let's have fun, it's just a game, who cares, it's low stakes, and his reality of it feels awful in my body to lose, I had to come to that realization very, very quickly that the desire that I had to just have fun wasn't going to happen. Also, we have been taught and we have been programmed to just be it's a game. If you lose, you lose. Get back up on the bike. If you fall over, get back up on the horse. That is the mentality in which we grew up on. So these meltdowns that are happening over each and every roll, it feels off. to us. It also feels a little embarrassing to have your child be flailing about on the ground because they have such an aversion to losing. So these are all like happening in real time in my body. I'm feeling very triggered that my son is having this experience. Like he's just having this full blown meltdown every single time he rolls, every single time I roll, every single time his brother rolls. And if anybody's doing better, we all know about it. So that's embarrassing. And that is something as parents that when we're embarrassed and we feel like we need to kind of double, triple down in the moment to stop it, it can change the way we react to the behavior. Because of this and my awareness of how I was expecting things to go, and then the very clear reality that it wasn't going to go that way, I had to adjust. So, number one, I know that first of all, I'm not going to ever teach the skill of frustration if I give in to these things, first and foremost. But how I approach these is going to dramatically change his outcome. So, I can't come in super hot and be like, knock it off. You are embarrassing yourself, right? Do I want to say that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is that going to make any sort of impact on his behavior aside from just adding more shame and embarrassment to what he's experiencing? No, because he is going to now have to feel like he has to defend his meltdown and he will double down on that. And I don't want to go now create a bonus experience that can be avoided. So I'm not going to let him win in order to appease the frustration and tolerance that he has. Instead, I am just not going to feed that pattern. By feeding the pattern, meaning he is doing everything in his power to bring us into his dysregulation, because he has in fact told me, and many parents in my community have shared this with me, and they've gotten to this point with their child and they're able to have this conversation, is when there is dysregulation, it can come out via our child in aggression. It can come out in mean, nasty words. It can come out in physical lashing out. But they feel better, and there's this activation when we finally join them in it. It's this like, phew, I'm not the only one doing this. And the more boring we are and the more neutral we are around such a triggering thing, the less fuel we are feeding this pattern. And so my husband and I locked eyes and we were like, we're in the pattern, like, it's like we're in it. And so instead, we just decided to focus on like saying and sportscasting and narrating everybody's situation across the board in the same exact way, not like highlighting the really good ones for him or like really giving in to the sadness of the bad ones. We were just like across the board, we were like neutral sportscasters. We're like, oh, okay, so the ball went through the middle, or oh, the person knocked down 8, or oh, can you believe that? Like we just were super neutral and we kept it like very sportscasty. So we weren't adding like, oh my goodness, Trey, like his little brother, you just did a strike, you're so good. Like none of that. But we made sure it was like high fives and compassion across the board. My husband would like definitely every single time I did like a strike or a spare, he was like, wow, that was awesome, mom. Mom made another strike or whatever. We were just like sportscasting. We didn't focus on anything else. Game 1, I won. Game 2, I won. And by the way, this is not normal. So we were all sitting there being like, what is happening? Like, how is this possible? And so he was, of course, getting more and more frustrated, more and more frustrated. And I pulled him aside at one point and I said, listen, we are here to have fun. You are allowed to have all of your feelings. You are allowed to have all of your feelings. This is something that we work on at home, where if we're frustrated and it's not going the way we want, we have some tools. We can use those tools here, or you can stay stuck in your frustration, but it's not changing the outcome of the game. Matter of fact, done and done. We are going to continue to have fun. You can join us in that fun or not. Now, game 3, it shifted a little bit. He didn't say, yes, mom, I'm gonna shift or any of that stuff. He was like, I'm angry, just lose, did the thing. But I started noticing about the third frame, he started pretending to have fun. Now, inside my program, we do simulations, and these simulations are essentially we mock up what a typical challenging pattern can be so that our children actually feel the sensation in their body, and then we guide them to the replacement behavior, the desired behavior, the regulated behavior that we would like to see, which typically leads to a lot more self-awareness in the body. It also leads to collaborative problem solving. It also leads to them being able to understand that there are two options in the brain. I don't have to constantly follow my impulse. I can actually make a better choice. And not only can I make a better choice, I know what it feels like in my body to make a better choice. So I started noticing that around frame 3, he started to try to practice. And boy, did that practice look weird. It looked a little mean-ish, where he would kind of like it was almost like, "Are you making fun of us or are you trying to be happy? Because you're so frustrated that you're losing, but you're trying to be happy." And so Trey and I had like we have like a high five sequence, like a secret handshake. And so we would do that a couple times. And he stepped in and asked to do the secret handshake. And so Trey was like, okay. So they did it a couple times and I saw him smile. But he was still kind of staying in the zone. But then by frame 4, 5, 6, and onwards, he kept like over practicing. Like it was so performative to the point where my husband and I were kind of looking at each other. We're like, oh my gosh, he's like definitely acting at this point. It was so performative. But he slowly started getting out of his funk. He slowly started to not be so rude. He slowly started to not high five us so hard with aggression. He slowly started to have fun. The next day, we were on a walk with the kids, and Hunter was basically like, first person to this like stick wins. And of course, he's right next to the stick. And Trey's like, oh my gosh, you were right next to it. Of course you won. And he actually said to Trey, hey, it's all for fun. There's no trophy at the end, which is something that we had said in the bowling. And I had asked him, I said, that makes me think like last night when we were bowling, can I ask if you started simulating partway through without my help? You started simulating to try to practice and get yourself to a better feeling. He was like, yeah, definitely. He said, I was so miserable. I was having such a hard time and I was really frustrated. But when we practice, I tend to feel better. And so he's like, so I just tried to practice. And I was like, yes, it was quite the act. He was like, I know. He knew, but he was like, but I did actually feel a little bit better. I'm going to say something you might not expect. Losing it over the teeth brushing battle again with your ADHD child isn't a patience problem. It's an expectation problem. Your child should know this by now. You've had this exact same fight hundreds of times, and they have to do this every single day. But they keep ending up in the same reactive trap, and so do you. Before You Lose It is a step-by-step video workbook combo that helps you get out of this reactive cycle for good. It is available right now. Trust me, this is one worth pausing the episode for. So jump into the show notes, grab Before You Lose It, and feel the shift in under 39 minutes. Here is why we do this. Granted, was it still awkward? Yes. Was it a dramatic improvement from the falling on the ground and the screaming and the flailing and the yelling at people to lose the game so he could win? Yes. Something very similar happened again where he was able to state his feelings. Like, I was angry because you didn't come when I asked you to when you were picking me up from summer camp. That's why I said what I said. I was really angry. I could have done that better. The only reason these sentences are coming out of my son's mouth is because we practice them, is because we have dress rehearsals and we run simulations for those hard moments so that he understands what to do. Because left to his ADHD devices and his impulses and his lack of executive functioning skills and his lack of emotional maturity, he's not going to choose the desired behavior. And he's going to choose something that draws people into the chaos. And he was choosing that. And I let him know, you're in the pattern. Not you're being a bad kid, you're ruining the fun, you're nasty to be around, this sucks. It was, hey, we're heading into that pattern again. I can help you through it. You can stay miserable, but you're not going to pull us in to the pattern. We're going to stay here. You're welcome to join us. And we talked about it a little bit later when he was like, it's just so hard to not bring you down to the anger. He's like, I want you to join. I want to annoy you so that you get down into the anger with me. So I'm not in the anger alone. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks. That makes a lot of sense. And how about we look at it from this perspective? We also have another option here. Yeah, I can join you in that anger and it never typically ends up going well. Or we can build some skills so that we can help you come back up to neutral so that you don't feel so bad. And then everybody can be operating kind of at like a neutral or positive place. He was like, I do actually think that's a better idea, but not the instinct. And so I think it's important to share this because we have these really, really high expectations of our kids just by the sheer nature of how many times we've been in the exact same fight. How many times do we fight over brushing teeth? How many times do we fight over bedtime? How many times do we fight over putting your shoes somewhere? How many times do we fight over turning off the TV? How many times do we fight over losing a game? So many. But we keep falling into the same pattern because our nervous system is primed for the fight. Their body is like, this is my one option. I just got to fight to the death. This is the hill that I will die on. And instead, we can simulate and practice and see what works, what doesn't. Hey, as we're running this practice of losing a game, what part of this feels like supportive? What part of this is absolutely a no and we'll avoid that in the future? What part can we double down on? And that's what we do every single day inside of my program with the parents that I work with is we start to identify these patterns and we start to notice the complexities of it versus just staying stuck in the emotion of it. When we view every single one of these moments with emotion, we hate being around these kids. We are deeply resentful of their choices, and it's really hard to function. It's really hard to be around them. It's really hard to want to play with them. It's really hard to want to engage because every single time it just feels like it ends in chaos, madness, fighting, rupture, all the things. So instead, what we do is we get to zoom out and we get to look at the pattern. What about this pattern is driving me nuts? What about this pattern is really hard for you to get through? What parts trip you up? What parts feel so challenging? What parts suck you into the emotion? From there, we get to actually have skills that we can develop. We can actually start to build to something. We can always look at like, I just wish they would just lose a game and be chill and not care. Okay. If that's the case, if that's like the goal, that they'd be able to lose a game and not scream at each other, not, not fall down on the floor, not punch their brother or sister because they're upset. How do we reverse engineer that to actually be successful? What are the missing skills in order to actually achieve that? Then once we know that, we can get into the mix of practicing that skill so that when we do experience the actual moment, the real life scenario, they've had some reps so that it's not just immediate emotion hijack and there's nothing, the wheels, the train is off the tracks, there's no brakes, right? When we can start to develop skills around the lagging areas that cause a lot of tension, we have options. We can do a lot with that. And we get to test and figure out what feels better for us, what feels better for our kids, what was most successful. And we get to do that every single week inside my program. We get to do that multiple times a week over the same scenario so that we're really figuring out how to make this work. So if you have a child who has low frustration tolerance, if you have a child who can't handle losing a game, if you have a child who can literally not tolerate when it doesn't go exactly the way that they wanted to, this is the kind of stuff we work on all the time, every day. And it makes such an impact because they don't like the way they feel either. They feel like terrible kids. And it just feeds this narrative of I'm the bad kid. I am terrible at this. I just want to be normal. I hear that from parents all the time. That the kids say, I just want to be like my other friends. I hate having ADHD. I just want to be normal. And we want to come in and correct, no, your brain is just different. But we're compassionately trying to get them from A to B as opposed to building that skill so that they can handle it, so that they can feel confident in it. We're trying to solve, and manage symptom, symptom, symptom. But where real change happens is when we start to identify what's getting in the way for you to do that. What are the thoughts? What are the beliefs? What's the pattern that we're stuck in? And then we can start to develop a shared language. We can start to develop some tools to use. We can start to develop some off ramps of regulation and start to identify this is where we need to stop this conversation, not, just barrel through for the sake of getting through. So I just, I'll always use myself as the example. I'll always share, the nitty gritty and the ins and outs. I'm not always nailing this, but the system has allowed us to get through a lot of these hotbeds of conflict unscathed and also coming out with a better understanding of my child and a better understanding of what he needs in those moments. And from doing it from this lens has reduced friction and chaos in the house exponentially. Where it used to be this rolling boil of fight and gross and aggression and resistance is just like we catch ourselves. We're like, we're heading into the pattern. And we're all like, right, right, right. Okay, pivot. Let's do this one thing that we figured out we needed to do. Okay, how can we move forward? And that becomes this. My son is learning this fundamental skill of when things don't go my way, how can I still be present, not destroy the whole experience, and I can regulate myself and I can try to get creative to solve the problem. That's what we're practicing day in and day out with this resistance and the power struggles and the frustration tolerance, all of that, which is lagging executive function skills because emotion regulation is part of executive functioning. So is communication. So is working memory, being able to hold multi-step processes. There's so many aspects to this, but all tied into it is skills. These are all skills. We learned these skills in a very different way. They weren't taught to us. We kind of had to figure out coping strategies and we had to kind of read the room and there was a lot different learning environment. Now we're of the generation where all feelings are welcome, but we don't know how to deal with the behavior. That phrase, all feelings are welcome, all behaviors are not. Okay, yes, agree. How do we address the behavior? And that's what we do inside the ADHD blueprint is we really figure out what is the behavior, what's the pattern, what's driving it, and how do we get to the root, and how do we get to that faster and faster, and how do we build in regulation practices, and how do we empower our child to creatively problem solve? It's magical. It's truly a magical experience, and just being able to give this gift to the kids of being able to not feel like they're just the black sheep, not feel like they're always the source of conflict and problem, and just knowing that they have a team of people by their side who's willing to solve it with them is just it's incredible. It's a really beautiful experience to see. So, from everything, from like brushing your teeth to brushing your hair, if that's a battle, which it is in our house too, all of these little things that stack up and lead to this bitterness in our body, how can we work together to eliminate that? Well, it's systems work. It's systems work because it's too emotional all the time to be able to just grit and bear it and willpower your way through it. If this resonates with you, there's a bunch of different ways to connect with me in the show notes. I am here to support you through this, to build the systems inside your home so that you don't have to feel like you're walking on eggshells and it's just awful all the time. So as we head into the school year, let's get some systems in place. Let's get some things moving so that you feel more empowered. You feel more confident as the parent, and just the temperature is able to lower a bit so we can actually move the needle forward. All right, connect with me in the show notes. I cannot wait to support you, and I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Responsible Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Mackie Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.